Good day, everyone. Charles Wilson here from the DC Democratic Party. Want to welcome you back to Statehood Speaks, the DC Dems podcast, where we talk to local and national Democrats about why they are Democrats and what issues are important to them. I'm excited today that our special guest is Mr. Jamal Holtz. He is the president of the DC Young Democrats. Jamal, welcome to the podcast, man. Cool. Hey, listen, so we like to start off our podcast off the same way with every guest, with the very first question: why are you a Democrat?
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. That's a good question. Why are you a Democrat? It's almost like one of those things where I feel like your lived experience shape sort of your decision making on like what you do and why you do. And I mean, I am not a huge like you're this party and sort of you believe in this list of things, or like you're that party and sort of you don't know how to sort of work across the aisle type of thing. But I mean, part of the reasons why I'm a Democrat is just because like simply my lived experience shaped the type of things that I wanted to work on, the values and the things that I stood for. In our current structure and political system, being a Democrat sort of made the most sense. It was the party that often was the first and at the forefront of moving issues forward in our society. Everything from
So you're
healthcare
now the president of the
to
DC Young
schools and
Democrats.
healthy communities. Like those are things that sort of I was aligned with, and sort of the
So
Democratic Party stood
tell us
for.
about the DC
The
Young
things that I wanted
Democrats.
to stand
What's
for
the
in
mission?
partnership.
What's the goal of the organization?
Yes, second term. Yeah, no, and yeah, I am in my second term, and it's funny because every day I feel like you age out just because like the more younger people get involved, and sort of you're feeling like when you grow a beard, no more braces and everything, like you like at some point I'm no longer gonna be young, and it makes you feel like you're getting old. But DC Young Democrats, I mean, I always say for me it's a place to create a space for young people to convene, activate, and elevate in a way where it is almost, I think my role and my job is to represent the 84,000 young people in DC who identify as a Democrat from the ages of 18 to 36, um, and then sort of even younger, to create sort of that pathway and opportunity for people to get involved into the political process, but also to be a voice for young people in this city around some of the most critical issues that are impacting our country and impacting our city as well. Um, as a membership based organization, I think it is our role and responsibility to represent the voices of those young people and create the spaces for those young people. Um,
So I always
Whether
said
we
that we
disagree
need
or
to
not, right?
create
I
a
think the goal of
DC
our organization is to create that
Young
space
Dems at Heart
for young people in this city
organization
to
for
disagree
all
while
our
also being
leaders out
agreeable around some of the things that we care about. So that's what I think the role of Young Dems is.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a favorite saying that I like to say, like
So I guess what
this guy had
inspired
taught me the saying
you
is like
a couple years ago to
we
get
don't stop playing
involved in the
because we get older.
organization?
We get older because we stop playing. And like, yeah, you can be young at heart. You can play forever. You know, be forever young Dem. I mean, I think what inspired me is actually funny. I always tell people like
Okay.
I had no
All
sense or desire of being involved in politics. Like it wasn't like this. You're surrounded around all these politicians get involved. There wasn't like a dream of like one day I'll be president of the United States. It was really like I used to want to be an FBI agent, and like I used to watch Criminal Minds, and people like the people on that show kind of just inspired me to get involved in like law enforcement, and I like wanted to be an FBI agent and sort of do psychology and stuff like that. But it's really for me, it was when I was a part of the Marion Barry Youth Leadership Institute,
right. Yeah.
also known as the Mayor's Youth Leadership Institute. It was like that sort of, and I got involved in that organization not because I wanted to get involved in my community. Quite frankly, I got involved because they were paying young people to learn about civic engagement, and I was like, I can get a check just to go to an ANC, like learn about the ANC, like so. Yeah, it was across the street from my high school. So I got involved in that organization and really like reshaped my entire thinking around just being involved. And it kind of like put me in spaces and places that I would just traditionally wasn't in. And the paycheck really turned into a opportunity for me to get involved in the politics and sort of seeing like local community
Cool.
issues and going to ANC
So
meetings
what
and
do you
being able
think
to help
is
somebody
some of the biggest
through the
issue
One
or
Word
the
Press, like
biggest
that was
issue
something I got
facing
very
young
excited
people?
about and proud of, and was wanted to be a part of, and sort of this nature of wanting to be involved in politics kind of just catapult from there. I really think I think it's a lot of issues that are sort of facing young people today, and um, I think we're seeing young people who still are trying to think about what does it look like to live affordable, and that's more than just in housing. Live affordable in the sense of how much they're paying to go to the grocery store. How can they transport and get around town? Are they getting the type of work and jobs where they're getting paid a living wage where they can actually live? I mean, what I find is that young people, like, we're young and we kind of do also want to have fun, right? So like I'm seeing young people today make a decision on like, do I go have fun with my friends or do I just stay in the house? And sometimes those decisions aren't because they want to, it's just because they have to for the sake of the quality of life. So I do think like we are seeing like the quality of life for young people. Like that's something that people are caring about, wanting to see affordable housing and stuff
Hmm.
like that, and wanting to stay in the places where they grew up. I would say another thing is sort of it's I think it used to be easier to say young people were the main contributors to sort of crime here in DC, but the statistics prove like that's even today that's not even the case. That young people aren't outpacing like the crime. Young people committing crimes are actually going down, right? So in my sense, it's more than just like creating like talking about like young people are involved in crime and we should care about crime, but we should. But I also think it's the bigger question is young people don't don't often find the opportunities to get involved in places or spaces that are where they're welcome unequivocally and unapologetically for who they are. And I'm often seeing a lot of young people, even in the young Dem circles, right, like wanting to create their own spaces because they feel like traditionally the other spaces don't welcome the youth voices. So, but yeah, I mean, I can go on and on about some of the issues that I think young people are fighting for, and we're seeing a lot of young people even now seeing like fighting for sort of gun violence
Great.
prevention in
All right,
communities
so
across the country.
we
Like people
can't
from
have a
Tennessee are
podcast
sort of traveling
called Statehood
down to
Speaks
Florida or like going to
answer
other counties and cities to
Statehood's
basically help
question.
other places fight
Uh, so,
for these things as
how
well.
do
So,
you see the DC statehood movement evolving?
uh, I mean, I would say the stay-up movement has come very, very far. Um, we are further in the movement than we've ever been in this history of statehood, where we've seen record number of passage of the legislation in the halls that have been introduced, conversations in the Senate, and sort of we've moved the needle pretty fast. And sort of there's been a history of sort of organizing that I think has led us to this moment. Sort of, I mean, I think about when I was getting involved in the statehood movement. It was really one of the campaigns that I helped co-found was called 51 for 51. And it was kind of that theory of making DC the 51st state with 51 votes. It was inserting strategy into the movement. Sort of all across the country, all I heard was that people either one did not know about the statehood, lack of statehood movement, or people sort of thought that DC was already a state. Um, and sort of it was this dichotomy where people wanted to be involved in the fight simply because they believed in democracy, but also people did not want to be involved in the fight because of the political ideology that they were involved in. So I think where we are in the movement and where we're going is that there's sort of two focuses we need to start thinking about and be very aggressive around. And that's an educational focus and that's a political focus. And those two can happen in tandem, but also they have to happen separately with some force behind it. That we need to be educating people across the country and other places about the lack of statehood, not rooted in the party politics, but like rooted in the what does it mean to be a democracy and not have taxpaying citizens not having the right to vote? Like, what does that look like in conversation? There's a political conversation that needs to be had around like who are candidates and
I
people that we're
appreciate that. What
supporting and activating on a political side to actually be
if
stewards of
you
DC statehood unapologetically.
somebody said, you know
So,
what,
I
I want to
mean,
be
I
like
think those
Jamal?
two have to happen sort of in tandem for us to see the movement continue to move forward.
How do I get involved in politics? What advice would you give them?
I say, don't do that. um, I mean, I often tell people like politics don't always have to be the outcome of your organizing and advocacy. um, particularly around a particular issue. But politics is often the beacon of where we cannot turn a blind eye to. Is a space and place where we can't turn the blind eye to. So I believe that for people who want to get involved in politics, is first it's finding the issue you care about, and then ask yourself, is politics the right avenue of doing that? Because it's not, to me, it's like politics to me isn't necessarily um, it's not a profession. It's almost like a thing that we must feel a duty to do and be a part of because of the issues we're fighting for and advocating for. And it's a vehicle of change, right? And I think for people who are looking to get involved in that space, they one have to know that being very intentional is important in this space, but also being um, I don't want to say not being fake, but more so like I do want to say like being intentional, but also like what's the word I'm trying to use, but not being fake, like authentic. Being authentic is super important in this space, and I think when you have those two things, it almost makes the work of politics easier because you're passion driven and not sort of
Okay,
power driven.
great. So I want to go
So I
back
tell people
to
like
before
find an
you
issue you care
speaking, you
about, get
said
involved in sort of your
you kind
local
of touched on
communities,
it
your local organization. And
about
if politics become that
there's
path
this
that makes
view of
sense, do so, but don't turn a blind eye to the people who
political
are
apathy
making change within
with young
politics.
people, um, and being disconnected from traditional politics. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think there are young people who are growing a dissatisfaction and sort of a disdain towards sort of like these political structures and government and everything because I mean, it's frank because they often are finding that there are broken promises, right? Or like that they don't know where they fit within these systems or structures. And they're often find themselves preaching to an empty like room at times when you're like, and a great example is like when you have young people turn out in record numbers in this past election, but yet, or even like back to 2020, actually, let me go back to 2020. When you have record young people turn out in 2020 to really see a change in their democracy and see a change in their communities, unfortunately, a lot of those changes just weren't felt in everyday people. Not saying that didn't happen, right? But they often weren't felt, and that's often because we don't do a good job at the top thinking about how do we make sure that the work we're doing that trickles down to the bottom is reflective of the people who are in need of the work. How do we bring some of those voices to the table, but also how do we make sure that that work is sort of like I often like to say like how do you turn pain into power, right? Like how do you turn personal stories and personal lived experience into power? It's often like you have to bring the people who it's closely impacted to the forefront of the issue. And I think that's often where we fail in the work of politics is bringing the people who are impacted to the forefront and let them lead and take charge of the issue. So I think with young people, they grow a sour taste around politics because we're just seeing frequently that like either the changes that we're asking for or hoping for isn't being implemented, or like there aren't many spaces or places where we feel like we can be all about ourselves in those spaces. But that doesn't necessarily mean we need to turn, like I keep saying, the blind eye. But it doesn't necessarily mean we need to turn the blind eye to it because we should use that as leverage and opportunity to actually be more fearful than anything. And you look at young trailblazers over the years or issues that have changed communities over the years, always had young people at the forefront of it. John Lewis stood in the March on
Hmm.
Washington at 23 years old. Um, like you look at those young people
Great.
who are at
And
the
you
forefront,
talked a little bit
like
about change.
that
That
is, I
was
think,
your
what we
last
need
word.
to
I'm
start
curious,
having power
is there
around, like
anything that you would
recognizing the voice
change
and our power of the
about DC
being,
politics?
not and leveraging that to actually impact and affect change in our community. I read that question, I immediately had an answer. Um, and I think that the biggest frustration I have in DC politics is there is like this identity politics running deep, right? Like you
Yeah,
can be
yeah,
walking around with one person and now you like team this, right? Like I can have on this color and now I'm like now on team this, and like, and it leaves no space for conversation at all. Like, or like I see Charles hanging out with that candidate, and it's like, oh, Charles is fake, right? And like, that is not the space I like for DC politics, because we're all Democrats, and it's the only place where I see in America kind of where Democrats are literally going head to head, and that's fine. Like discourse is often good, but when we often
that's
take
funny. I
things
remember
too personal to
I
where we
posted a
believe
picture of me working out with a certain color
like
T-shirt on,
that this person has a set of beliefs because
and
they're
a
walking with
friend got mad
somebody.
at
It's
me
just
because
like,
of the
I
color
think that's the
T-shirt
thing
I
that we need
have
to change in
because they
DC
thought I
politics
was on
is
a particular color.
collaboration needs more.
uh, so, this is final
Yeah,
question.
yeah. You even
I
see,
appreciate
you
you
can
joining
see
the
us not even
conversation.
saying
But is
names
there
because
anything
somebody
you
gonna
want to
watch us and be
leave
like, I knew they were.
folks who are listening at home?
I'm just saying.
Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts I have. I mean, tune in. Leverage the party to sort of be a convenient space and sort of opportunity to be the first gateway to your advocacy, politics, or whatever experience. But I would say in these moments of sort of, it's been very easy to feel defeated in these moments, especially the last 40 days. Um, but feeling defeated is very different than being defeated. And when we allow being defeated to define our
I
work
love it,
and our
man.
actions,
Those are
then we
great parting
lose.
words
So I think
today.
leverage these
So
moments
listen,
of sort
I
of
want to say
that
thank you
feels
again
like
for joining the
hopeless
podcast.
to be
Anytime you want to come
hopeful
back,
for the future,
please let me
and
know.
think about what does it
If
look
you
like
know of
to
anyone else we
move
should
work
invite,
forward.
let me know. All right, man. Have a good one. All right.
100%. No, I appreciate it. Open door policy. Thank you. You too.